Hi. Sorry to change the channel on you, but my name is Joe Kraftwald, and I'm hopefully here to help you train your bird. Now, this videotape is going to show you a lot of information about how to not only get your bird going, but also hopefully train your bird. Now, I do perform and produce shows with birds, and some of the tricks that I do in the shows are real fun and real dandy. But all of these tricks started with a very simple process that I'll be showing you. Now, through the magic of videotape, if you've missed anything, still I'm going too fast, you can stop it with your own remote, if you have one, and I'll guarantee you that I'll repeat the information over and over so long as you rewind me. But with that, let me go ahead and set one of these guys down, and let's start with our first subject, which is what kind of bird would be right for you. Now, there's 4 things that will determine whether or not a bird is right for you and what type of bird would be right for you. That is your own personal level of experience, the amount of knowledge you have of dealing with potential behavioral or psychological problems that you may encounter with your new bird, your own particular lifestyle, and also to the determination, confidence, patience you would have with your bird to see certain problems through. For example, your level of experience. Maybe this isn't your first bird, or maybe you've now moved to a larger bird with which you're having problems, and that prompted you to search for this tape. However, if you haven't been with any birds before, you may want to meet and deal with as many birds as you possibly can, because each new bird that you meet will give you a different type of an attitude, a different personality, and some different types of behaviors that will help increase your base of knowledge and also hopefully will contribute towards a better dealing between yourself and your new bird. Your knowledge of dealing with possible behavioral or psychological problems is basically going to come from the amount of time you spend with any one bird. Seeing things through like screaming or biting, which we're going to talk about later in the tape. These types of problems are going to occur from time to time with any bird because they do have their own life and they're going to be living in your home. And if you want to counter or solve these problems, you are going to have some type of knowledge in working through them. Hopefully this tape will help you do that. Now, your own particular lifestyle. Obviously, to have a large bird like this with a powerful vocal voice, but also, too, some strong biting pressure, you wouldn't necessarily want to have this type of a bird in a small apartment, where he might chase your neighbors out of their home or even chew his way out of your home. However, you do have a lifestyle where you have a few hours a day to spend with your bird to give them the type of relationship I'll be showing you how to establish with them, then probably a big bird would be right for you. The most important thing of all is that you have the determination, confidence, and the patience to see things through. And your purchasing of this tape is one of the first steps in developing the patience to see some of the problems through. Hopefully we'll be able to work through some of those problems tonight. So the first thing we need to determine is what kind of bird is right for you. There's 4 major factors that are going to determine whether or not a large bird like this is the bird you should have. First of all, most important is your level of experience. This is your first bird. Large macaw like this may not be the best bird for you to begin with, because they do have loud voices and they do have many different types of problems that you may or may not be able to deal with unless you've had experience with smaller birds. This also brings us to number 2. Your knowledge of dealing with possible behavioral or physiological problems is also going to be an important factor in determining if you're going to have a good relationship with one of these big guys. Also, too, important, number 3 is your lifestyle. If you have the type of lifestyle where you're never home, you live in a small apartment, and a large bird like this certainly is not going to be right for you. And number 4, you also need to figure out if you have the determination, confidence, and the patience to see problems through. And purchasing this videotape is a good first step into solving some of the problems with your bird. Now, let's discuss quickly purchasing a bird in case you don't already have your bird. You must make sure that you're going to walk out of the store or the breeding farm with the bird you like. See, one of the biggest problems people make is they'll go out and they'll buy a bird just because they can afford it. And they'll hope to turn that bird into something they may have seen in a bird show or at their friend's house or in another pet store. This sometimes leads to regrets, and regrets are a tremendous destructive factor in establishing a relationship with your pet bird. Also, too, you don't want to place a lot of expectations on your bird. If you buy a bird, taking it home expecting it to talk, your bird may feel extra frustration. They feel he's not pleasing you, and therefore that will help to destroy your relationship as well. It also goes the same for tricks. Can't necessarily expect to bring home a bird and have it suddenly start doing a lot of tricks. See, these birds are products of their environment, and hopefully with the help of this tape, we will develop an environment which will make your bird want to please you. And just like this guy is doing all kinds of things right now, kissing and an upside down, spreading his wings on command, your bird will want to please you as well. Another possible thing that could help you before you purchase the bird is to meet as many different types of birds as possible before choosing the one you care to have for a long period of time. Some of these birds will live 60, 70 years, so the choice you make before you bring them home is going to be your most important one. Every extra bird you meet will give you some hints and information and knowledge into the type of bird you feel you can handle, the type of bird you like, and the type of bird that you're willing to work with and see some of those potential problems through. Another good idea is a non-refundable deposit. Some of these birds are very expensive, but if you put a little bit of money, say to the pet store or to the breeding farm, they might hold the bird for you for a week or two. You could come in every other day and play with that bird, and at the end of the week, if you're sure that's the bird you want, then maybe you're ready to make that 60 or 70-year commitment. Now let's go into what you're going to do with this bird when you do get him home. Okay, so let's say that you've gone through the right types of decision-making processes, you've chosen your bird, and you've brought him home. Now, before we even start working with the bird, we need to discuss some of the vast amounts of information that are out there. Well, I have here a display set up that just sort of reflects how much different information is out there. The first and most important thing you would want to have on hand is a good book. Now, these are obviously large, thick books, and there are many books on the market. You have to remember something. Most books are somebody's personal opinion. Even, unfortunately, this tape is my personal opinion. However, if you're going to purchase books that are written by one person about a small subject, make sure you do keep a large number of those books on hand, because each different opinion is going to give you some different types of information. You may be able to pull helpful hints from each different person or each different book, and that'll help you into a better relationship with your bird. I happen to like the large technical books because they most accurately describe your wild bird. Now, when I say your wild bird, I don't mean a bird that hasn't been tamed. I mean even your hand-raised macaw wild bird, because these birds have not been in captivity for more than a few hundred years. And genetically, biologically, and psychologically, they will always act like wild birds. But it's by using their wild instincts to our advantage that we can get them to sort of carry on a very pet-like relationship with us. Now, diet is one of the most controversial topics that can be discussed with the pet bird. That's why I like to turn to one of the biggest and most technical books that are out there. By turning to the page about, say, the macaw, the military macaw, like the one we've purchased, it says right here that the food the bird eats comprises of seeds, nuts, fruits, berries, and some vegetable matter that is procured in the treetops. Now, that is all these birds eat in the wild. Anything other than that on the list, which you would find from a book somebody wrote after 10 years of watching these birds in the wild, is going to be extra. and especially anything that could possibly be a human food, such as table scraps, items like that. Anything that's not found on this list is not going to be an item that your bird has been built for. So they've developed, by means of evolution, to eat just these types of materials. So before you go and feed your bird table scraps or something that you might think is fun for it to eat or that you might think is good for it to eat, you want to make sure that you discuss it over with a veterinarian or some other type of an expert before you do consider feeding those objects to your bird, because there are a lot of items out there, especially a lot of human foods, that can be very detrimental to your bird's health. So enough about that. Let's talk about the good foods that were found on the list. Most of the things that were found in most of macaws' diets are fruits. And there's all different types of fruits that are good. Your bananas and your apples are going to be your staple diets. And they should have at least a couple slices of this on a daily basis. Things that are extra are your nectarine, your peaches, your mangoes, your grapefruit, even your melons, cantaloupe, and honeydew. Grapes are good for your bird, and your bird may even like them. You want to use these only in small quantities because berries and grapes may tend to make your bird a little bit runny. And especially since sickness is something that you would want to pick up on as its earliest symptom, giving the bird grapes or berries may cause a runny type of a situation in their droppings, which may trick you into thinking your bird is sick when actually he just kind of ate too many grapes all at once. Vegetables, over on this end, you can feed your bird vegetables, but it really doesn't add nutritionally too much to the bird's diet. It can clean up their system, but it doesn't really do too much in terms of what they need from the wild. Now, granted, we did just read that the birds did procure some vegetable matter in the treetop, and they will probably get the same vegetable matter from the skins of some of the fruits that you see here. Now, I'm not against feeding vegetables, but they just don't fit into the system I'm trying to teach you here on the tape, so you can use your own judgment there. As far as the different types of seed mixes, there are probably as many mixes on the market as there are types of birds. All I feel is important when it comes to seed is that you look for the widest variety possible. Look for a nutritional breakdown on the back of the packaging of the seed. And the larger of a list you can find means not only the better the mix, but it also means that the manufacturer of that mix has gone to more effort to make sure that your bird is getting a healthier diet. Also, too, you never want to overfeed the bird. A macaw like the military macaw behind me here would never get more than a third of a cup of this type of mixture of seed a day. Now, I don't mean a third of a crock like the dishes you see in the cage we've also purchased with our bird, but I mean a third of a cup. Because by cutting the bird back to only the amount of seed it needs, it's going to eat every bit of that seed. And what good is a wide variety seed mix if the bird is not eating the entire wide variety you're giving them? Also, too, overfeeding birds is the number one problem I've found in dealing with people over the last 10 years when it comes to searching for the solutions to some of their birds' other problems. The way I recommend you feed your bird so that he's not getting overfed, but yet is eating a certain amount that will not only keep him in tune with looking towards you for food, but also support our system, is with the use of measuring cups. Your smallest, your eighth cup, would be for your conures and your cockatiels. Your quarter cup would be for birds the size of Amazon parrots, Gaussian cockatoos, and other smaller citizen birds. Your third of a cup would be for your umbrella cockatoos, your miniature macaws, and other birds in that range. And of course, you would never give more than a half a cup of seed to your larger birds like your macaws. Now, earlier you noticed I gave this bird a third of a cup because during initial training, we want to make sure that he's looking to us for food. An example Feeding your bird on a daily basis would be to use that third of a cup, pour it into the bowl. Tonight we might be feeding banana, so we would slice our banana in such a way that it would be not only easy for us to prepare, but also easy for the bird to eat and hold on to. After laying the banana into the cup, we would then want to apply our vitamins. Vitamins are an important part of every bird's diet, and I feel that, again, the longer the list of nutrients on your vitamins, the better for the bird. I also recommend a powdered vitamin. In this way, we can sprinkle the powder on top of the cut edges of our fruit, and in that way, we've basically adhered our vitamins to the fruit so that as your bird consumes the fruit, he also consumes the vitamins. This is very important. This is why I believe that vitamins in the water do not work. Do not believe the bird gets enough concentrated vitamins to make it worthwhile. Now, sunflower seed is also a controversial topic. I happen to believe in sunflower seed. I also believe it should be 25% of the bird's diet. Therefore, I keep sunflower seed in my pocket, and if you were to see one of my shows, you would see my birds getting sunflower seeds during the show. Happens to be a little bit easy to use sunflower seed. Since I believe it should be 25% of the diet, I use it during my shows as a way of giving the birds their 25%. At the end of the day, they receive a dinner that has no sunflower in it, and their daily total is in a wide variety. In your case, as you'll see a little bit later on, you might be able to keep sunflower seeds in a candy dish, or in this case, a Tupperware bowl, somewhere in your living room that when your bird is out and you're working with them, you might be able to give them a treat or two, and that'll help to promote a faster, healthier relationship with your bird. Well, we're going to move some of this food out of the way here. We're going to start talking about how you're going to actually start working with your bird. Now let's look at the bird's cage. Cage is one of the most important tools that your bird is going to be faced with when he's in your home, because the cage protects the bird from himself. These birds can be very destructive, and they can find all sorts of ways to kill themselves in your house. There are electrical cords, dyed carpeting, even drapes and stained wood that could all poison your bird. The cage is only as effective as it's used. Every cage should be completely padlocked when the bird is in it and is not going to be worked with. Now, this cage has a convenience of having feeding doors which open from the outside. Well, since most birds are very smart and will learn to open these doors as well, these bars can also be locked in a down position so that the bird cannot open them and take sort of unwarranted walks through your home. The cage also should be large enough where your bird can have a little bit of exercise room, but he doesn't necessarily need to be able to open both wings at once. These birds are very smart. He'll find any position he can inside there to flap his wings anytime he wants to exercise. But part of our system is to make sure your bird each day comes out of his cage onto a play stand, such as this T-perch right here, so that he has time out with you, during which you can then clean the cage, put his fresh food in for the day, and reward him for coming out with you. Now, before we take him out and show you exactly what would happen during the playtime, I want you just to note a couple of items, some different types of toys. Now, this particular bird here enjoyed chewing food cups. So a very simple toy I made is by cutting a couple holes in one of the food cups, supporting it from a chain from the ceiling, I've given him a specific cup which is okay for him to chew. This has solved the problem with him chewing the actual feeding cup, and also to give him an item that he can play with a lot. Wood in the cage is very important. This not only is needed for them to strengthen and exercise their beaks, but it may help to keep them off of wooden furniture you will find in your home. Also, too, a rawhide like the one that's in the bottom of this cage is very good, but make sure that it's the type of rawhide that has not been colored, stained, or scented. A lot of people do get rawhides mixed up and might accidentally give the bird one that's meant for their dog. Some of these chemicals haven't been tested on enough birds to know whether or not they're safe. Right now, I'm going to go ahead and change into some comfortable working clothes. We're going to get this guy out and show you a little bit of basic handling skills that I feel you should learn for your bird. Before we get right into the hands-on training portion of the tape, I want to discuss again the points of what I call systematic conditioning. Now, systematic conditioning is my term for having a daily routine designed to have your bird want you as the number one goal of its life on a daily basis. Now, all this means is that when the bird is outside of his cage, you will clean his cage, put fresh food in. When you return the bird to his cage, he perceives you as the vehicle for supplying him with his food and his safety and his shelter. That is an important aspect in having a wild animal in captivity. You will also want to have your playtime always be before your feeding of the bird. That way he associates getting fed and having the nice feeling of food in his crop with doing something good with you. Also, too, your bird will know what to expect from you. He'll know what the daily routine is. He will know that the playtime comes before feeding. So he won't actually only be looking for feeding time, he'll be looking towards his playtime with you. This will help him to be less stressful. It will also add more synchronicity to the relationship you're trying to establish with your bird. This, again, utilizes the wild instincts of the bird to promote an interactive relationship with the bird you want to become your pet. Now, basic training is basically taming, but a lot of people get those words mixed up. Taming is when you do not give a bird a choice until he accepts the one behavior or the one form of response that you are demanding from the bird. Training, however, offers the bird a wide variety of choices, and the correct choice will produce a reward. So this is actually taming your bird, even though we may be doing it with the bird that was once tamed or was originally hand-fed. Now, I do not believe in the following methods. Toweling a bird, because I just simply do not believe that you could take somebody, in this case a small bird, put them in, say, a straitjacket in a room by themselves and expect them to suddenly like you because of it. That's what the towel method is to me. I do not believe in cornering your bird in a bathroom, because I believe this is a new and stressful environment in which he suddenly hears echoes and sees fixtures he's not familiar with. I don't believe that that is very progressive to the relationship. I also don't believe in gloves. I do believe the bird could be trained to gloves, but that's not necessarily what you want the bird to be doing for the rest of your relationship with them. If you want him to be on your hand, you should train him to your hand. I also believe in a non-stressful type of training, and going right for your end product with just a couple of sticks and a T-perch is the quickest way to get a tame bird without any broken feathers or any injuries, or also a lot of unnecessary stress. Also, too, talking to your bird until he calms down is a method I don't necessarily believe in. I think that you could sit here and talk to your bird for several months. You could even have your hand around the cage. But until you have an interactive physical relationship with your bird, he's not going to learn to deal with you on a one-on-one basis. Now, let me show you how I feel you should get the bird out of the cage and onto the T-stand. Then we can get the cage out of the room, because, again, we don't want the bird to be able to make choices at this point. We want him to understand and accept the choices we are making for him. By removing the cage, we will prevent him from going back to it until we are ready to have him go back. Now, in getting the bird out of the cage, we want to remember that we want to limit the bird's decisions. So the decision here is basically that we want the bird to come out of the cage now. We first offer him the response that we want, which is getting on the hand. Now, looks like he may bite, so we'll pull out one of our sticks that we're working with, and we'll see if we can get the bird out of the cage this way. There we go. Now we will immediately push the cage out of the way, blocking the cage with our body so that he will not go back to it. And this is where we'll put him onto the T-perch. That way he has something solid to stand on. Now we can move the cage completely out of the room to make sure he doesn't go back to it on his own. Now, if the bird didn't want to come out of the cage immediately, could have easily gone around behind the cage and had the bird run away from me and right out the front of the door. Now, if our bird didn't want to come out of the cage as easily as he did, he could have easily walked around behind the cage, sort of scared him out through the door. I realize this sounds like it's against our goals, but as the bird is moving away from us, he's also moving out the front door. Remember, our choice was to have the bird come out of the cage now. Once he's on the floor, most wild birds are going to instinctively step up onto something. This is why having a stick handy in your hand, lifting the bird up with one or two sticks if he's absolutely refusing to agree with us at this point, and getting him over to the T-perch is going to be your quickest way to getting the result you need to get your bird started. If you have the patience to continually return the bird to the perch, and he finally does even decide to catch his breath, he's going to agree with the choice you've made for him. This is the first beneficial step you've made with your bird. Now, we move him back a little bit to where we can work on all sides of him. We can now basically keep the bird on the perch by blocking any of his escape routes. If he goes to jump over here, we can easily stop him by holding the stick in front of his face. Now, we have a stick in each hand at this point because we don't want the bird to bite at our hands, and basically, the sticks become an extension of our hands. The next step, obviously, is to start having the bird step up. Remember, we are pretending these sticks are our hands. So as we ask the bird to step up onto one stick, we will use the second stick to keep the bird's attention away from what he's stepping up onto. Remember, birds only step up. So by placing the stick across the chest, it will very easily step up. To return him, we simply hold this perch lower than the original T-stand. Now, at this step, we want to run him over and over again, both sides if possible, so that he learns as many different ways of stepping up as possible. We're not as concerned with his beak and his biting because even if he resists us, we're still able to work with the sticks beyond what he's trying to do. Now, with this hand over here, he shows a little bit more of a resistance. So I'm basically using the other stick to block his beak off of my hand and back onto the perch. Now, this is all rough in the beginning, and it should be rough because your bird has very little idea of what you want him to do. This is why your consistency to work through this problem is going to be your key into getting beyond it. If you approach the bird the same time every way, your bird is going to anticipate what you want and step forward onto your stick. Also, too, by simply lowering him back, he realizes that that is a cue for him to go back to the T-perch. You're communicating to him that you wish to pick him up. He's communicating back to you his acceptance of being picked up. Again, if you watch that foot, as soon as we bring the perch up, we can get a foot up and onto the perch he comes. Now remember, this is all with sticks. We haven't attempted to touch the bird yet. We haven't attempted to pet the bird yet. We're breaking this down into small steps. Now let me discuss a couple of rules in working with your bird. You never want to have the bird be loose in the house. That's why working with them against a wall or in the corner of the room is a good place to keep them contained. Running around the house does three things. Number one, it's a chance of your bird getting injured. Number two, it teaches him that the harder he tries to get away, the more frustrated you get. The more frustrated you get, the more chance you have of leaving him alone. So that could lead to a rewarding situation to where your bird is being rewarded by running harder and harder. Also, to remember, we're not going to allow the bird to make decisions, especially the decision of when to stop and the decision of when to go back to the cage. Because once your bird learns that he has the choice of when to stop the training session, the remaining training sessions after that are just going to be a mess. Because now your bird has realized that he can determine when you should quit. And that always goes back to the same question of who is training who. And with a bird that's this smart in captivity, that battle is going to be going on from here on out. And it will occur over and over so long as you own the bird. Your bird will choose many places in which to fight you, not only in the initial training, but over feeding, over several other things, because your bird is thinking about you 24 hours a day. And even if you spend all day with it, as a human, you cannot spend more than maybe 8 to 10 hours a day with your bird. So by the time you walk in the room, such as I did with this guy at the beginning of the tape, he's already outthought me. Very important to remember is that your bird is always trying to stay one step ahead of you. So we have to work extra hard to stay a step ahead. Now, we've gotten to the point where he's stepping up very good with the sticks. We're still using this as our shield to keep him from trying to bite the hand that's holding the stick or from jumping too far forward to where he's going to go over the stick and beyond. We might then drop one stick and move to the hand. Now, your bird should perform the same behavior because, once again, he doesn't really care what he's stepping on. He's basically paying more attention to the stick that is shielding it. Well, if he does decide to go down and bite, you're not going to pull this hand back. Because you can't ask a bird to step on something that's not a solid object. You're going to keep this hand in there, and you're going to use this shield. That way you can still get your bird to step up. Now again, this method is to get your bird to the point you want him the quickest so that he understands what you want, he's less stressful, and therefore is more agreeable. This system has worked in taming a bird in as quick as 20 minutes, a military macaw like this. 20 minutes to go all the way to a fully tamed bird. Now, obviously, each of these birds has their own personal history, their own disposition, and you may be having more or less problems with your bird at this stage. All I can give you is the best case scenario, and with the videotape, hopefully you can keep replaying it until your bird fits in with the system I'm trying to show you. Now, once we have a bird that's willing to step up like this, we have to then go to the other tactile type of relationship, which is touching and petting your bird. Now, again, we can start with the sticks in the beginning. We can touch the bird on the back or on the head with the stick. We may even use both sticks because the bird only has one beak. Since he only has one beak, he can only worry about one stick at a time. Now, obviously, he's going to try to get away from these sticks. A little touch in the tail, a touch over to this side, and we can basically control the bird. Now, I'm touching him on the back right now. As he turns to face the perch on the back, we'll touch him on this wing. As he goes to step on that, we'll move it out of the way, touch him again on the back. Now, as I do this may not be necessarily as fast as we're doing it here. It may take a couple of days. We can move these sticks in to where we're actually touching the bird. I'll simply pick him up and return him to the perch. Again, when a bird is on the ground, it's very easy to pick the bird up. They're looking for a good, solid way to come back up. And he's getting a little bit more excited than he needs to be right now. So we'll go back to something he knows, which is stepping on the stick. We've already promised him that when the stick is below his chest, he can step up on it. But this is confusing him a little bit. The stick is going over his back. So I'll very quickly try to work a finger in underneath the stick and just pet him a little bit. I'm not touching him hard, because as I touch his feathers, even if I'm not touching his actual body, he can feel himself being pet. Now, the first time we make this type of contact, we're going to pet him for only a couple of minutes, and we're going to back off. We're going to give him a couple of minutes to himself. This will help reward the bird for being agreeable in the first place, and also reward him for accepting the choice we've made for him. Now, each time we come back to pet him, we should be able to use less and less of the stick. I should be able to come in like this, and as you can see, he already realized that he's not going to be hurt by the stick. And when it does go over the top of his head, there's going to be a caressing feeling coming from the stick. Remember, the bird doesn't understand the difference between the stick and the finger. So the finger's moving, but he still sees the stick over his head. To him, this is just a longer form of the human hand. Now again, to also reward him for accepting this, we can back up and show him what he already knows, stepping up onto the stick. We've already established this as part of our relationship. That's right, in only 15, 20 minutes, we've established a relationship with the bird. There we go. Now, as the situation dictates, and this is going to require your own personal choice, you can try it without the stick completely. You can reach in. Now, if the bird does look like it may bite, then you can simply back up to the stick and go back to your last step that was working for you. And one point I should mention right now is that I personally feel you should never allow the bird's beak to touch you. If they do not need their beak as a third hand, as it used to be thought, they don't need their beak to pull themselves up onto your hand, and therefore, by keeping their beak off of your hand completely, you won't have to play a guessing game as to whether or not he needs his beak on your hand or if he's just simply going to bite. And as you can see, the methods I'm using here do not allow the bird use of his beak on my hand. So let's go back to our last step again. The stick on the top. There we go. Now, the bridge from here to just petting the bird with your hands is very similar to two sticks together. However, this time we're going to use two hands. Remember, the bird has one beak. By holding the hands out like this, he's actually taming a little bit too fast. I'll slow him down. By holding one hand out over here, you can touch the bird. As the bird reaches to bite this hand, you pull this hand back and touch him back here. As he turns around to face this hand, you go back to this hand here. By moving these hands back and forth, you're sooner or later going to be able to pet the bird and get a little bit of a healthy response out of him, such as the fluffing of the head. This means that the bird has realized that this isn't necessarily so bad and actually has a little bit of good feeling to it. Remember, these birds are very communal in the wild, and preening is a large portion of their day. So this is one of the most immediate, emotional parts of the relationship you want to establish. Now, if you back up again, go back to the stick for just a second, have him step up, As you can see, we're putting everything together. The big picture is coming together very quickly here. Now, we want to do both at once. So we'll use the stick with the finger, hold it over the head, and we'll touch them until we get a good response out of them. Boy. Once we have the response we want, we can set him down and give him a couple minutes to rest. Each time the rest period shows him that he's doing a good job, gives him a chance to catch his breath, maybe cool down a little bit, look around and take in the surroundings. And remember, we're doing this all in the same room of your home in which you expect the bird to live in comfortably for many years to come. Now, as you can see, the last step to this is very easy. It's just a matter of putting it all together. No stick this time, just the hand as the shield. There we go. Yeah, there's nothing to bite there. And then reaching over the top of the head. Again, the bird does not necessarily realize the difference between the stick and the hand, but at this point, he should be enjoying the hands a little bit better. From here, it's easy to see that you're going to have a great relationship with your bird. Now, in our next section, we're going to talk about an already tame bird. What happens when you run into some problems? We're going to get back to square one here, and then we're going to discuss that. Well, now that we've had a successful session, I want to come back to one of the points that I made earlier. While the bird is out of the cage, this is your time to do anything you want, to fix toys, to replace items, to clean the bottom, refill with fresh water, and again, remember our feed for this bird. I'm going to put our feed in there right now. That way, when the bird goes into the cage, he'll be rewarded for coming out and working with us. Not only in his initial training, but this will also help keep him looking for me on a daily basis. When we go to put the bird back in, we want to end on the best note we've gotten for that day. And it's the same whether or not you're doing basic training like we did today, or you're teaching the bird to ride the scooter. You always want to end on the best positive note. So what we're going to do is we're going to, again, be the vehicle for the bird to obtain his dinner for the evening. So we're going to turn him around using both hands, just as if we still had sticks. We're going to get his attention up. We're going to have him step up onto the hand, pet him once or twice, just to get a good response. And because we don't want him to feel he's putting himself away, we're going to reach all the way in and make sure he goes straight to the perch, as if it was the T-stand we just took him off of. We put him all the way inside. He goes right for his food dish, thus being rewarded for working with us. And we make sure he's locked so that after we walk away, he doesn't get out and hurt himself or destroy something in the house. Now, him going right over to his food dish is very important because it shows that you're not overfeeding your bird, so he is looking for the food. So if he doesn't go for the food dish right away, chances are maybe you are feeding him too much and he's not getting properly rewarded for his session. Well, let's talk about a couple of other problems. Your bird is already tame. You're encountering problems like screaming or unnecessary biting. There's some general attitudes that I've always taken towards these problems that I'd like to share with you right now. First, always think like the bird. Whenever you're trying to get your bird to do anything, if you can look at the world through his eyes, chances are you may understand what he's thinking. You may be able to find the source of the problem a little bit easier. How are you going to find the source of the problem? Well, you're going to locate whatever reward the bird is deriving for this unwanted behavior. Maybe the first time he screamed at the top of his lungs, maybe you ran into it, yelled at the bird, shut up. Well, to the bird, that looks like you came running in and gave him attention for this loud sound. So as soon as he wants you in the room again, he's going to make the loudest sound he possibly can. The only way to work backwards through this type of a problem is to avoid, remove, or somehow create a negative feeling towards this reward. In other words, you can avoid it by not rushing in when the bird's screaming. You can remove it by just reaching into whatever room it is the bird is screaming and turning off the lights. Now created a different type of a reward or action that follows this bird's behavior that you want to remove. Now, the only way you can attach a negative stimulus to it is by punishing the bird, and I don't recommend that you do that. There are several ways to punish the bird, and really the most drastic way of punishing a bird that I've ever recommended is by simply taking the bird, pointing it into a different room of the house where it's by itself. This does two things. A, the bird gets no attention for this loud screaming, and B, it gives you a little bit of a distance away from the screaming to where you might gain a little bit more patience and be able to think about the situation a little bit better. Now, other usable disciplines are timeout. This is where you can simply walk out of the room so that if the attention you're giving the bird is what's keeping him going and he's taking it for granted, you suddenly remove that attention completely. This is very effective for hand-raised birds that have been raised with attention from day one. Also, if the bird is biting for what seems to be no reason and you just can't figure out the reason, you can start solving the problem by simply dropping the bird. I don't mean slamming it to the floor, but remember, this is a wild bird, and one of the scariest things in his life is to suddenly have the floor come out from underneath him. Well, it's not going to hurt him to land on the floor in your house, but if he does reach down and bite, and suddenly your hand disappears, now he's faced with the problem of how does he get back onto your hand. By reaching down and picking your bird back up, you might be able to control the conditions under which he's allowed to sit on your hand. Now, that is only to get you to the point of understanding why the bird's biting you in the first place and breaking the chain of events that leads towards that bite. Now, one of the last things that I would like to say is that all of these problems are all related to the environment. You, as the bird's owner, is responsible for every action, good or bad, that your bird is doing. And only by learning as much as you possibly can are you going to be able to control the environment, hopefully through this systematic conditioning I've shown you, so that the bird is basically unconsciously going to make the choices that you want him to make. Now, some of the recurring themes I hope you've picked up in this tape is never to pressure the bird physically. This destroys the positive mental process you're trying to get going with your bird and establish with your bird. You want to pressure him only mentally. That way, it's a game to him. It's a matter of who's training who. And as long as you stay a half a step ahead, you're going to be able to bring the bird into the relationship you want. Again, always look at the situation from the bird's point of view. This is your biggest key into understanding the world from your bird's point of view. Also, always have information resources available to assist you. This tape is only one in a large selection of information out there to help you deal with your pet bird. It's my personal opinion, and it's the method that I've used on over 1,000 different birds that I've trained in people's homes, just like this home we're in now. And lastly, and most important, you must assume the burden of proving your friendship to your bird. Once you accept him as being like a small person who just doesn't speak the same language as you, you will be able to non-verbally communicate with him in a way that will help him to understand your actions, and his reactions to your actions will show you what he's thinking, and from there you can build and build and build and have a great relationship with your once wild bird. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope I've helped you.